Sorry, I always laugh because I just hit record. I
Okay.
should have hit record 10 minutes ago. We've been having this like
It's
back
really
and
good
forth conversation.
conversation. Yeah.
I know. I'm like, stop, stop, stop. We just need to hit record and go. Welcome, Elizabeth Heider. It's great to have you here.
Thank you. I'm so happy to be here.
So I'm Bradley Charbonneau. Is Elizabeth Heider. We are here basically for starters. We are both part of a conference, this writers' conference put on by Storyhouse Works and Hannah Huber in Amsterdam on March 20th, 2025, which is the day after tomorrow. So if you're watching this before that time, today is also for you a little teaser of what's to come on Thursday, because both Elizabeth and I are will be on stage and in different forms, which is interesting what we're both talking about. And also, if you're watching after that, well, hopefully it's inspiring for you as an aspiring author, or like the stuff we were just talking about. Elizabeth just said, my editor thought my second book was just weird.
That's
Right.
a spirit.
I thought was so cool. Because like then, as an inexperienced writer, you might say, "Oh, then you quit everything and you stopped and you decided to, work at Home Depot, right?"
Yeah, exactly. I mean, and this is kind of the process you and I are talking about is like, do we, and this was the cool conversation is, like if you're looking at the market before you start writing a book, like how much of it should you be doing that? Should you be like writing what you're passionate
Yeah,
about and just going towards it? Or should you look and say like what market exists and then should I backtrack and reverse engineer and then write the book that fits the market, right? So
yeah,
that's the discussion that you and I were having about that.
yeah.
So what did you do? What was your process like for the books that you wrote?
Well, here's another teaser for Thursdays because I'm talking with Janet Margot, who is an Amazon expert, and she worked at Amazon in the sen not she didn't like wasn't in the delivery truck. She worked at she was in the KDP in the book part and
Mhm.
all about basically helping authors sell books, right? How
Yeah.
can authors sell more books? Which of course means how can Amazon sell more books, but how can authors sell more books? And so she knows it from sort of the other side of the camera, so to speak, of how books sell and why books sell and what works and what doesn't.
Right.
So what Janet and I are talking about on Thursday is sort of what's your why? Why are you writing your book? Just like you were just saying, Elizabeth, about, are you writing it because it's a passion project? Is it just for fun? Or is it because I want to sell a million books every half hour? Or I want to be an expert in my field or whatever? So that's what we're talking about. Because honestly, when I first started, I didn't care about any of that stuff. I just wanted to have fun and write a silly book, and so that's why I really resonate with you saying my editor thought my second book was weird.
She did.
And
She did. Well, she
and
thinks,
my
yeah, totally weird books. Like this is so the book that I just published this last year, May the Wolf
yeah.
Die. That was I was just counting. I think it's the seventh book I've written in total.
Wow.
So it
Wow. I'm
isn't
so happy to
even,
hear
it's
you
not the
say that.
first. Yeah, no,
Yeah.
no, no. And
That's really
actually, in some
important.
ways, like, I mean, early on when I first, I mean, I wrote my first book when I was like 21 or something, and I really
Yeah.
wanted to get it published. And like, I'm really glad I didn't, because I learned a lot from the process, but I look back and I'm like, ooh, and
Right,
every single
right.
book I've written, I've really sort of learned from that process. But you were
Yeah.
talking about, so I got, so I was able to, fortunate enough to get an agent. Her name is Sharon Pelletier, and she's in New York City. So I got her in 2020. So it was with a book that I'd written that did not get published and we worked
Yeah.
on it. We did it. She's an editorial agent. We did a lot of edits. We went out
Yeah.
for submission. Nobody picked it up. But I
Okay.
learned a lot from that too, because like the comments that I was getting back from the editors that were rejecting this, like had some really relevant comments about pacing and structure. And so that kind of like
Oh,
made me start thinking about, okay, what am I missing? How do I learn that skill? Right. And so I
right.
started educating myself on that. And then I wrote another book, which I really wanted to write, and I sent it to her, and she was just like, I don't know what to do with this. She's like, I really, and then she was really, really kind about it, but she was kind of like, I hate it. She just,
Wow.
she was like, I don't like this. And I
Yeah.
was just like, oh man. So we had a little conversation about that. But then I had to think, I was like, do I regret writing it? Like, no, like I
Right.
loved that book and I was really happy that I wrote it, and so it's on the shelf and it exists in the world and maybe I pick it up in some other form, but I also learned a lot from writing it. And
Yeah.
so so when I
Yeah.
then, all of the stuff that I learned from all my previous writing, I was able to sort of really figure out a lot about structure and storytelling and how do I do pacing and character development and when do you pull things into the story. And so that's what I ended up incorporating all of that when I wrote May the Wolf Die. And then that was traditionally published by Penguin. And it did actually, it's been really critically acclaimed this last year. So it was a great place to start my writing career, my public career.
Yeah.
But I mean, I've been writing my whole life. And so,
Yeah.
but it is kind of that, like, how do you decide where you're going to invest your time you're going to write
Yeah.
books and have them not get published. And yeah,
Yeah.
basically.
You know, because my question would be like, when do you give up? After how many rejections and all that stuff? And you always hear about the big names and they've got
Why
the
would you
sack
ever give
of,
up? But why would you give up, right? If this
yeah.
is what you love, right?
Okay,
Like the
but
answer
see,
is never.
that's the pure artist speaking, right? Because
Yeah.
I'm the same way. There are times I never forget. I don't know if you know Wayne Dyer. So
Oh
Wayne
yeah.
Dyer, yeah. So he decided he had this. He had written like 40 books, and he makes this big proclamation, like publicly. He says, like, I'm done with writing. I'm never going to write again. I've written enough books. I'm moving on. And I'm never going to write again. And like the very next morning, it's like 6 a.m. He's like, I can't not do it.
Yeah.
I can't not do it.
Are you supposed
I
to
give up.
stop me? Yeah, you
Yeah,
like tie my
yeah,
hands and I can't talk anymore. I have to write.
yeah, yeah,
But then I think the real question is, I think that the trick, maybe the heart of the question is that like writing is like a communication, right? So it's that I have something to say, which means that there needs to
hmm,
be someone to hear it. And so the frustration that you have but not being published is that then that communication is unsatisfied because you've said the thing and then nobody's actually receiving it. You know what I mean? So they're not having
yeah,
their own relationship with your work. And so that's the part that I think can get really sad. Like, regardless of whether or not you have like huge, I mean, I think as a writer, people don't tend to make a lot of money as writers. It's just a
yeah.
rare thing if you were to just like hit it big. So you're not gonna
Right,
like do this to
right.
get rich, right? But like to communicate. And so I think that's maybe the thing that's like, when do you give up? Like, you don't. Like, why would you give up, right? I don't know. I
Right.
couldn't stop writing books, even if I never got published. And I think that's the trick for me is the thought, like, like, who am I doing it for? Like, why do I have things I need to say, And so I'm just gonna keep writing until the day I die, even if I never get published again.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I agree. For me, I don't know, people with regular jobs. I don't know if you have a regular, or I say
Oh yes.
regular,
Yes, I do.
but yeah. Well, and people talk about, oh, one day I'll take my cousin he's like counting the days until retirement, right?
hmm
And it, you'd have to pull me kicking and screaming to retire from the writing business. There's
Oh
no
yeah.
way.
No.
I love it. I do it. And I also agree with Wayne Dyer. I can't not do it.
Yeah.
There's been
Yeah.
times where I thought like, no, 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 I'm done. I can't, I'm not doing this anymore.
As a matter of fact, like the
Just,
best the best writing I do is procrastination writing. Is like when I have to like do other tasking, you know what I mean? When I'm working like a job where I have to do something that's like really technical or like nitpicky and it's like, oh my gosh, the best writing I ever do is like when I'm supposed to be
wow.
doing that. So
Yeah.
I always kind of say that I write in the margins of my life, because until
Oh,
recently, like I
cool.
wasn't writing full time. I was doing other stuff full time and then writing whenever I could. Yeah.
Yeah. That's interesting you say that. I can remember very specifically. I was living in San Francisco then. I had a job in Berkeley. There was a BART train, a tram that takes 24 minutes. I remember because it was the most efficient 24 minutes of my day.
You were just like,
But
"Shh."
yeah, this is and there's no writer's block. There's no doubt. It's just go.
Yeah,
Your
yeah.
mind's like, this is the time. Get going.
Right, right. And it's really funny, like one of the tricky bits too is like I mean I've like read about like, Ursula Le Guin and like all these different writers who have or Stephen King and they have like their schedule, their writing schedule.
Yeah.
And that was always mysterious to me because I was like,
Yeah.
well, you just kind of write all the time, right? Um, so I think
Mm.
but it's different if it's a full-time job, right? Because then you have to
Yeah.
how to like because I think when I do it as an escape, it's just a different dynamic, right? Like, because I have to do other stuff, and
Yeah.
I'm like, I gotta get away and I gotta
Yeah.
But yeah, I don't know. It's like I like when you write, you like I mean you just have things that have to come out of you. Is that what's
Oh yeah,
happening with you? Yeah.
yeah.
Hmm.
And I often talk about sort of like a car has an exhaust pipe or a drain, or a sink has a drain, or even a
Yeah.
body is a little more too much
Yeah.
information, but a body you have to take in, you have to let it out, right? And and if you don't, bad things will happen.
Right, right.
Your car will explode, you will explode. So you got to let it out. And then for me, it's also just therapy.
Oh, it is, yeah. It's
It's
like
just
also sometimes I don't know what I think about something until I write it down. Like it's
yes, I
my way of
completely agree.
processing, which is why
Yes.
I'm kind of like I've been really like with Chat GPT and stuff. I find it to be like I don't use that for my writing simply because like I want to wrestle with the thought and figure out what is it
Yeah.
I really mean here? What is it I really
Yeah.
want to say? Like what are the right words that express this? And so kind of like, I don't want to outsource that part. That's the fun part.
Okay. So
Yeah.
speaking of ChatGPT
Yeah.
and speaking of book number two that your editor said was weird,
Yeah.
I've been having a lot of fun with ChatGPT because I tend to have oddball ideas, or
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
at least many people think they're oddball, and I don't. I'm like, this is totally normal. What's wrong? What's wrong with you?
Yeah.
But so I've put some of my oddball ideas for ChatGPT, and
Cool.
it's really helped me.
It's a
It's
great brainstorm buddy, isn't it? For
yes,
everything. It's great
yes,
brainstorming. I love it as
yeah.
input. It's like
They're always
having like a
awake.
really well-educated friend. And they're awake, yeah.
Yes,
Like
yeah.
2 a.m. You're just like, I want to know what was the state of covert operations in Europe in the 1950s, right? And you just like have a
Right,
conversation,
right.
And so
Yeah.
like,
Or I don't know how much you want to go down the ChatGPT path here, but
uh-huh,
you can, if you have a pro account, you can upload stuff, right? And it has this sort of memory
uh-huh.
of you and whatever you've uploaded. So it's gotten to the point where I've uploaded a few of my books,
Oh my
and
gosh.
it can say, uh, hey, based on like book, 2, 3, and 6, or I don't even have to say that. I can just say, based on what you now know of me.
Uh-huh.
What should I do in this situation or something like that?
Oh my gosh. You mean with the
And
book, you mean like plot-wise?
yeah, yeah.
Oh,
Or
whoa,
or
okay.
or or, or nonfiction wise, or what would be a good finish for this story based on what you already know of me of my books. So,
Does
because
that
you're
weird you
talking,
out though? I mean, how does that feel for you? Like, I think I would feel like, like,
so again, okay, all right, I'm just going to tell you some of my weird
yeah, tell me.
ideas.
Yeah, I want to hear.
Because, for example, I had a course. I'm like, I've done stand-up comedy, I do improv comedy, and I like lightness and laughter. I mean, hey, I am born in America after all, so, and especially you and I both live in the Netherlands now,
Yes, we do.
in Northern Europe, a little more serious. Um, and so I like lightness and fun and lightheartedness. And so I had a program for a while called, as a writer coach, How to Write Your Best Book Ever.
Oh, okay.
And very quickly, it just fell to pieces because of procrastination and perfectionism, and we were never finishing the thing. And so, funny guy here, I said, you know what I'm going to do? Because I was really kind of frustrated. Because
Yeah.
I'm very much doer, 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 go, 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 right? Get it done, wake up early, write a lot or whatever. Very production. And so I created a program called How to Write Your Worst Book Ever. And at first people are like, Bradley, what are we talking about now? What are you going on about? And so, but the people who kind of got it, they're like,
Uh-huh.
wait a minute. I think I know what you're getting at here. And so we actually did it. I've run workshops now, right? Worst
Uh-huh.
book ever. I have like covers. Covers have to be bad, by the way, in like
Okay.
Comic Sans font and stuff.
Okay.
It has to be bad. But
Okay.
the goal of it was to finish something, to accomplish
To
something.
just get past that sort of internal
Yes,
hurdle, you have to just
yes,
do it. Just do the thing.
yes,
It's kind of like when you're learning to ski. Like if you're not falling down, you are not
yeah,
pushing yourself. You've got to let
yeah,
yourself fall down. You got to, and maybe
exactly,
that's what you're talking about with
exactly.
that book that my
Yes,
agent hated. Was it's like, yeah, I
yeah,
don't
yeah,
regret it. I don't regret it at all. And I actually don't think it's a terrible book. It's weird. It's weird,
right,
but it's like I wanted to explore this thing that's like,
yeah,
okay, whatever, it's a weird thing, but why not? You
yeah.
know? Yeah, and make all the mistakes, right?
Yeah,
Do
I
fail.
like your skiing thing. It's funny. Somebody said the exact same thing the other day. If you're not falling down, you're not. learning or you're not trying
Yeah,
hard
you
enough or you're
have to
not
fall
pushing yourself
down.
enough.
Yeah, for sure. We're so careful, and I think especially when there's like a when we have some sort of a shame-based education system, right? Where you're just
Yeah.
like where you're
Yeah.
you're shamed for not being good enough, for not having the right answer or whatever. Like you kind of tend to sort of internalize that, and then you carry those voices inside with you. And so if you bring those voices with you when you're writing, that's like a
Yeah.
very dangerous situation to be
Yes.
in, right?
Yes.
And so fortunately I don't have that when I write. The problem is when I'm
Good.
editing, right? Because like I have to sort of
Oh, right.
switch my perspective and now I'm in editor mode, right?
Okay.
And so when I'm in editor mode, I'm very critical. And sometimes I
Yeah.
can like fine tune something too much to the extent that it loses all the meaning to it, right?
Yeah.
And so
Yeah.
there's that piece about like, you're just like, well, am I being too careful, right? No, no, no. Like, don't be so precious with yourself, you know?
Yeah.
It's a really great,
Wow.
great view.
You've got these great quotes. I'm going to steal them. Don't be so precious with yourself. I like that. So I've lived in Northern Europe for like, God, I think it's like 14 years now total. I lived in Germany for a while. I'll never forget. He was a good friend of mine, but he was technically my boss in Germany. And at the company, I had to say Z. I had to say the formal you to him, right? And I thought it was
Oh,
so weird,
oh, that
especially
is
as like
weird.
casual Californian American dude, right?
Right, right.
So it was really weird. And I'll never forget this moment. I'm at the copy machine, which is like
Mhm.
the extent of my job, by the way. It's super high level. So I'm at the coffee machine and I do something terribly wrong and I don't know, it spits out all the wrong stuff. So I made a mistake, right?
Uh-huh,
And so I was laughing not only with myself, but at myself that I made a mistake.
uh-huh.
And my dear German friend, who is a friend to this day, by the way, he was so taken aback. He's like, wait a minute, you made a mistake and you're laughing at yourself. It was so hard for him to comprehend
Yeah.
that
But it's
because
so critical,
it,
right?
yeah,
To
yeah,
be able to just like to not, what is it? Like I find one of the things I thought is really interesting. So part of my previous life, I worked as an analyst for the United States Navy, and I would
yeah.
deploy with like, deploy on Navy ships and stuff like that. And some of the most interesting folks that I ever worked with is I was doing some work with some off the coast of Tanzania on board, actually it was a Dutch ship, the Rotterdam,
Oh,
and I
wow.
was
Oh,
working with
wow.
some of these frogmen, right? These are the guys that were actually actively fighting piracy in the Horn of Africa, right? These
Wow.
guys were
Wow.
so cool. And the thing that I was really struck by was that, I mean, they took the job super seriously, right? Like
Yeah,
when it came down to business, they're gonna get business done. And they
yeah.
did not take themselves seriously, right? So I find
Hmm.
it's really interesting is that when the stakes are really high, like you kind of have to unload and actually not take yourself as seriously. So I always kind of find it really telling when people take themselves really seriously because I'm just like, okay. Because to me, when you see people who actually have those intense, really operational jobs and they don't take themselves seriously, I don't know. I find that to be really refreshing and really interesting lesson
Yeah,
about life in general, right? So
yeah,
like do the job well. But like laugh at yourself at the copy machine, right? Like
yeah,
you're allowed to
yeah.
do that, right? I think that's
Yeah.
great.
Yeah, and you're allowed to, your editor says your book is weird, and yet you keep going. And
Yeah.
then and what do you think this May the Wolf Die, that's your seventh, you said?
It's the seventh book I've written. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah. So see,
Overall.
I really loved it, especially like for the conference on Thursday. It's
Mhm.
gonna be a lot of aspiring writers. I think there's a good
Yeah.
mix of like I have a book idea to like I'm writing to I have lots of books already. And so it's just I think it's so hopeful for you to say, yeah, here's my New York
It's my
Times,
it's my first
bestseller.
pub no, it's my debut novel, right? So
Yeah,
actually it's the first published book, but it's the seventh book I've written, right?
yeah,
So it's my
yeah,
first book, right? But it's not the first
yeah.
book I've tried to write. Yeah.
But I think that's very important because if people they're striving for that perfection for that first book, that's the greatest thing of all time. And then, and sorry for the bad news, but the greatest thing of all time, it's you're gonna be on your deathbed and you're still gonna be like
Well,
with the little
not
red
only that,
pen.
but it's like, why would we think that somehow we would magically just be good writers, right? Like, if you're going to go be an engineer,
Oh, that's
right?
good. All
Like,
right,
you're just
that's
going to, like,
good.
you have to go through and you have to practice and you have to make mistakes and learn and learn and learn. And so I kind of feel like, okay, so the book, so I just finished writing, okay, so there's May the Wolf Die, and then it's a series. It's a 7 book series that I have, like, sort of planned out and everything. And so Penguin has already commissioned the second book. So the
Ah,
second book
this
is,
is book one.
so book
This
one
one's
was
book
May
one.
the Wolf Die.
Okay.
And
Okay.
then, so the second book in the series is the one I just
Okay.
finished writing. So I just finished
Okay.
writing book number
Okay.
2 in the series, and
Wow.
and kicked it to my editor just gave me back the changes, and I've spent the last 3 months just absolutely buried, like just totally turtling and just hermiting and doing this work on it.
Wow.
And so this is what I've done, and it's like I wrote this book, and it's kind of at the outside edge of my own capability and skills, right? But that's great because I want the next book to be better, but I want my capability and skills to be better. Do you know what I mean? It's
Yeah.
like every book
Yeah.
I write, I want to have it be super hard to write, but I
Yeah.
want to improve as a writer so that you know what I mean? Like I
Yeah.
so and
Yeah.
I think you can only do that by writing books, right? That's how you get better.
Yeah.
You just write the next book. So I don't feel bad about like, and if I write, and honestly, like, I mean, I'm super glad she doesn't think it's garbage, right? But like, but like, I'm gonna just do the next one, right? And maybe, and so
Yeah.
it's a journey. It's about like improving my skills as an author, and so
Yeah.
yeah, I mean, when I wrote Made the Wolf Die, it was the best book I could write at the time, but
Yeah.
hopefully 10 years from now, the best book I can write is a lot better than that book.
You just had another one. You said it was the best book I could write at the time.
Hmm.
'Cause with worst book ever, I actually would like everybody to write it every year
Mm,
because I want it to be the book at the time.
yeah,
And
yeah.
this is it's so powerful what you said. This is the best book I could write at the time. It's not, I'm going to work now for 10 years and then it'll be the best book in 10 years. No,
Right.
you're a different person in 10
Right, you
years.
evolve. Like I'm so different than I was like, yeah, in my early 30s or my 20s or,
Yeah.
even my early 40s, It's like
Yeah.
like what, and the things that I thought about and the things that I wanted to say and my perspective on life has changed too.
Yeah.
So when
Yeah.
I go back and I read that book I wrote when I was 21, it's like, oh my gosh, my life experience is different, my
Yeah.
understanding of
Yeah.
people is different. But if you read some of your favorite authors, the same thing is true. Like one of my favorite authors is John le Carre. And I read the very first book I read of his was the first one he wrote, which was The Spy Who Came In from the Cold. And so
Uh-huh.
he wrote that in his late 20s, right? And I
Oh,
hated it. And the reason I hated it was because I didn't like the female character. I was like, oh, this guy doesn't know how to write women. He just doesn't get it, right? And so I was very like, I was just like, yeah, I don't like John le Carre. And so
yeah.
then years later, I picked up The Constant Gardener, which he'd written much later in life. Oh, it's just beautifully done, right? And his
Oh,
characterization was
oh.
just incredible. And then, of course, like I read like Tinker Tailor Soldier Spy and Smiley's People, basically everything else that Le Carre has written. And his
Wow.
characterization is just like he grew so much as a writer and as an like studying human nature. And it was just, and so it's
Yeah.
just beautiful to sort of see that evolution. So I hope that that's what I'm doing too, is that I'm evolving like in my understanding of myself and other people, and also evolving as a writer too. And I think hopefully that gets reflected in what I write.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Wow. That's so inspirational. And to think also that you're evolving all the time and you've had this smash hit and you're evolving, you're gonna be better, and the next one's gonna be even better.
I hope so. Yeah, that's the plan.
That's
That's
really
the
cool.
plan. Well,
Yeah.
when I plotted this 7 book series, like I know where my characters are going to end up in book 7, right? And I already know, I can tell you right now, if you want me to write book 7 right now, I couldn't do it, right? Like it's gonna
Yeah.
require a
Yeah.
level of understanding and skill that I don't currently have. So it's like
Wow.
it's a leap of faith, right? I'm like, I'll get there. I gotta keep going and I'll get there naturally. I can't just jump into book 7 right now. Yeah.
It's really fun talking with you. This is really cool.
Likewise, this is
Oh,
wonderful
it's really
talking to
inspiring.
you.
I hope we're inspiring for listeners or viewers to come on Thursday. And if you missed on Thursday, there'll probably be another one. But just in general, from two authors here who clearly are never going to stop writing no matter what.
And that's the
And
fun part, right? Is we get to see other
yeah,
people who are also writers, right?
yeah,
This is such a
yeah,
solitary activity. So this is just a
yeah,
joy to talk to you.
yeah.
This is so fun. Yeah.
So can you give us a little teaser about what is the panel? I think we're at a panel, right? Uh,
Yeah.
what is that about on Thursday?
Yeah, so this is like the panel I'll be on is discussing like traditional versus non-traditional publishing. And so because my book was published by Penguin, that's the traditional route. I
Right.
got an agent and it was shopped out and it was published by a large publishing house. And so what does that process look like versus, of course, what do you do if you go self-publishing or indie
Right.
publishing? Like what does that
Right.
look like? What does that feel like? What is the level of effort? And I'm curious too, because I only have that one side of the experience. And so just talking to
Yeah.
you has been really interesting as well to
Yeah.
find out, like,
Yeah.
what is your process for that? And so I'm just finishing, like I said, I'm finishing all the edits for book number 2 in the Nikki Serafino series. And it's a tremendous amount of work. And I just kind of I want to touch bases with other writers and find out, like, what's your editing like? Like, how does that feel? Like, what do you do?
Yeah.
And then
Yeah.
the actual, like, like, how do you get to have the book in your hands? And, like, even because I know that there's one of the major differences is probably with marketing, right? Does that sound about right? Is like because like
Uh,
how do you
yeah.
do that? And so
Yeah.
like, but I think that I just am kind of curious to see what matches up along the way. So I think that's going to be fun. It's going to be really great to
Yeah.
talk to these other panelists and find out about their experiences, and then hopefully the writers that attend can kind of have it in their mind, like, what is the right path for me and for the book I want to write or the book that I've written already.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Oh, that's really cool. I'm looking forward to meeting you on Thursday.
I'm looking forward to meeting you too.
Yeah,
Thank you.
cool. And if you're watching this and it's past Thursday, well, you can go to Storyhouse Works. It's an Amsterdam company who helps actually authors with all the kinds of stuff we're talking about. And if there's no scheduled conference on the books, then go bug Hannah Huber and say, "Hey, we need another conference in Amsterdam."
Yeah,
So
she's
because it's going to be,
fabulous. Well,
yeah,
I'm sure she'll accommodate at some point because she's
yeah,
amazing.
yeah, it's going to be
Yeah.
great. Cool. Well, thanks so much for talking today, and I'm
Thank
looking forward to
you.
seeing you in person if you're watching. Looking forward to seeing you if you come by. And thanks again, Elizabeth. It's been a joy talking with you.
Thank you very much. And I look forward to seeing you Thursday.
Great. Bye for now.
Bye bye.